Yeah. What's coming up? What's
Woo!
coming out?
What's coming out? It's gotten worse since Tanya and I, because we're raw, real, and unedited on this podcast. So if you can't see, I'm currently like raising my hands up so you can see my underarms, and it's just like on fire. We're doing the previous podcast and I'm just like, how can I position my arms so that it does not touch each other? The skin does not touch each other and like irritate it more. So I think I've had a story. Did you want to say something, Tanya?
No, I'm like, let's rock this, whether it's an addendum to the podcast.
Yeah. When you were like, and your underarms, I'm like, do I pipe in? I'm like, no, let Tanya have her story. And then Erin will talk about hers. But I've had a story of doing it wrong. And, you know, I met with someone and they shared things with me. And I think the way that I was taught how to coach and the way I actually coach are for sure different. And I don't come from an authoritative, like I'm the coach, you're the client, there's a separation. Like I'm very much like, listen, I see you, I love you, I know
you're in the foxhole.
Yeah. And not necessarily like I know exactly what you're experiencing, but like shame and guilt and fear and all of those emotions, even high vibration emotions, like we feel them probably very similar in our body. Like I get you, right? And so I provided, you know, during our conversation, I provided love and compassion, right? Like a holding hand, a hug, several of them, you know, and not noticing it at the time. This is the way that our bodies work, right? Like our subconscious, and this is what I was explaining to this person, like our subconscious, our body is 95%. That's our subconscious, is our body. And so on the way home, which is a quick drive to my house, you know, I'm just like, oh, my underarms. And then I get home and I'm like, what's happening? And at the time they were not like this. They were like little pink.
They were probably maybe a 3 out of 10. And right now they look like they're about a 6 out of 10.
Yeah. And so telling Tanya like, hey, listen, look at this, you know, before we started the previous podcast, like getting on and sharing. And, in the past, some of this underarm stuff has come up. Like Tanya, I have had a lot of skin issues. I remember, which I don't know how old I was, 6, 7, 8, I don't know, but I used to eat French onion dip. And the association was I would get a rash on my face after eating the French onion dip. Like that's the way my parents or my mom would associate. But knowing and looking back now, like, of course, the rash on my face was from what I was experiencing emotionally and suppressing in my body. And always being told like I have sensitive skin, you know, that's been a big one for me. And I don't know up until last year when I really started like using retirement funds and assets that we had, if it had manifested in my underarms. It had always been on my face. But now this is typically when something happens, whatever I'm doing, and then I have a story that bumps up against it that is false, but has been told, you know, that I've carried out, you know, it shows up in my underarms. And my brain wants to be like, well, you did put on deodorant today. Cause typically I don't wear deodorant. I'm like, you did put on deodorant. I'm like, and you did not put deodorant on over here. You put deodorant on all right here, you know? So just noticing that when it's kind of like my body is telling me something and my brain or my mind was not aware that a story was being played out. Right.
Can I ask you a couple of questions?
Of course. Yeah.
So, what I want to ask you, Erin, is from a sacral response. So as a generator, like sacral response is that pure and is what's coming out of your arms. I mean, we already talked a little bit about this before we started recording the last podcast that we did, about the story of wrongness and
Yeah.
like how you do something versus how someone else does something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also curious if maybe what's coming up and out in your arms again is that wrongness of how you spend your money or how you spend your love.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
If it's also maybe associated with the house.
Maybe.
Is some of what's happening with your underarms associated with
No,
the
no,
house?
no.
Okay, so that's a no.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Is it a wrongness around how you're doing the house?
Mm-hmm. Oh, how I'm doing the house? No.
You just,
Mm-mm.
oh,
I
that
thought
was
I thought
interesting because you just
I
went, uh-huh.
I thought you were going to ask the wrongness and how I'm doing coaching. Sorry, I didn't let
Oh,
you finish your sentence.
so it's all around the coaching then.
Mm-hmm. All around the coaching and all around. I think I feel really confident in my marriage, and Jason and I have a very, when I say open relationship, what I mean is very like, I share everything with him. We don't have,
Yep.
In our relationship, I choose not to have sex with other people. I'm trying to think, like my mind's right now is like, is my kid going to watch this and she's going to ask me what that means? So that's why I was like pausing for a little bit, but we choose to be monogamous in our relationship, but I'm very open, and I have always been drawn to men. And what I mean by that is, if I haven't talked about it, my stories around fifth grade and women, and that's one of the reasons why I've kind of been guarded around women,
Mm-hmm.
because of what happened in fifth grade. And I feel like I've always gotten along with men. When I say identified, like I've always felt in alignment with men, if that is a way to describe it.
Well, you've
And
in the love and power equation, you've always been more towards the power or the, like
yeah,
it was power before it was empowerment, and
yeah,
you worked in a male dominated field, in a
two
male
of them.
dominated, yeah, in a family business that was very male dominated.
There were only three, just to give everyone an idea, there were only three women that worked in the company, two of which were me and my sister.
Yeah.
And one lady drove a forklift and did lots of air quotes man responsibilities. So there
Yeah.
wasn't much room for women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have naturally attracted men to
Yes.
coach,
Yes.
that want to coach with you, as well as you, like oftentimes you can relate with my husband very
Yeah, like
well.
I don't want to say like I side with the men, but like when Tanya and another friend of our, Christy, when Christy and or Tanya talk about their husbands, I'm like, I totally see the man's side. I see the husband's side,
Mhm.
and not from a like you're being unfair or anything about that, but like I see where they're coming from. I get it, and I just have naturally gravitated towards men, and if we're being quite honest, actually, it's men that are, if we want to like label men that are love, right? Because I have worked with other men who are power, and we go head to head. Old Erin goes head to head with men that are power, right?
Yeah.
Of course, right? Like nobody's going to tell me what to do. So the men that exude that very, and what I've told you, Tanya, before, it's actually like women, right? They're men, but and I don't want to say they act like women, but help me out with my words here. Like the
lovability, the softness, kind
yes,
of the
yes,
vulnerability that
yes,
when we see a man that sort of has, I mean, we all have love and power,
yes,
right? We
yes,
all have that
yep,
masculine and feminine, the yin and the yang. And some of us have a tendency to
gravitate towards more.
lean more towards one side or the other. And so we're not labeling people as this, but we
No,
see sort of a balance of characteristics, and in men that we call love, what we're seeing is a little bit more in touch with their yinness, with their
yes,
softness, with their
yes.
vulnerability, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Which ironically, now that I'm talking about this, of course, right? Because it gave me that safe space to be vulnerable with them. Like I remember one of my really close friends, and um, when we were both financial planners, like we hung out and we talked all the time. He was married, and it was a strictly platonic friendship relationship, but he was probably one of my closest friends. And we shared everything. And I remember his wife asking him if he was cheating on her with me. And he was like, "What are you talking about?" But just that draw or connection to me after fifth grade, men were safe to me because I knew what women were like. I had a story around, or girls, right? I had a story around that, but I actually gravitated to men who were very much like women in the sense of the softness, the caring, the vulnerability, the openness, all of that.
Yep.
And so, yeah, just noticing, came home and Jason was asking, just general questions, and I'm always upfront and honest. And like, if someone, it doesn't matter who you are, if you were crying, man or woman, whatever you are, in between trans, whatever, right? I'm going to offer you love and compassion and a hug. And I think from a society standpoint, I think there are air quotes rules of what you should or should not do if you were married.
Expectations, social
Expectations.
norms, what's
Yeah.
acceptable, what's not acceptable,
Right.
what's crossing a line, which is
Yep.
different for everybody.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a sort of a code of expectation
Yeah.
of what it means to comfort someone,
Yeah.
to give them a hug.
Yeah. And so, um, I think that there's just some things that are coming up. Like if someone would have walked in and saw us, they might have a different perception of what was happening
Mm-hmm.
versus what was actually happening, of me just allowing this person to have their experience and to provide a safe space, which is what we do in Who You, right? Like,
Yep. That's what we're all
and
about.
and here we go back to, my mind didn't recognize it, but my body was like, this is wrong because you're not supposed to, coach like this, or you're not supposed to open up like this, or which is all bullshit. But these are stories that get expressed when you were talking about the previous podcast in our bodies. These are stories that are coming up of how, and there might be some, parental, like, let me get my words. Jason and I, like I said, have a very open relationship, and we have a very loving relationship. And I wouldn't say that we're like, I'm not a huge PDA-er, but for sure we kiss in front of our daughter, we hug. He talks about my boobs and my butt, and like, it's a very loving, and like, your dad loves your mom and loves your mom's body, and your mom loves your dad and loves your dad's body. And we are open about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And growing up, my mom and my dad did not have that type of relationship. So here we go back to like, you get modeled one thing and you can either follow down that path, or you can decide, I want a different type of relationship. And noticing as I'm talking about this, because I really haven't had time to process it.
I was just about to ask you, do you feel safe right now to continue?
I think so. It doesn't feel, and yeah, it doesn't feel, I just haven't had time to.
So you're
Like,
processing real, raw, and
yeah,
vulnerable right now.
yeah. That might have gotten some backlash if that would have been my dad with another woman.
Mm-hmm.
Because my mom is not the way that Jason is understanding and secure in herself. And so, yeah, there might be some of that there that I may not even be aware of that's occurring,
Is there
but
some guilt? Is there some guilt
As-
surfacing?
I don't feel guilt. Like, ask me that question a different way.
Is some of what is coming up with your skin the vulnerability of being seen, transparent, and misunderstood?
Yes. And you shouldn't, like going back to society and probably my parental, right? Like you shouldn't be, if you're married, then you shouldn't be a certain way with the opposite sex, even if you don't feel anything
Mm-hmm.
towards them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where was it coming from for Erin? It was coming from a place of pure, genuine, like, you are a human being having a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been there and I know what I felt like.
Mm-hmm.
And it was important to me to have someone see me and be like, it's okay. And I want to be that for you person in front of me.
Yeah. Peter Levine talks about um, the stress response, and he even shares a like when a trauma happens or when something happens. He was hit by a car or had an accident, and he studies this stuff for a living, right? Peter Levine is one of the people that has studied trauma and trauma in our bodies. And I read his book, An Untamed Voice. I think that was the title of the book. And he was talking about having somebody at the scene of the accident being able to talk tenderly to him, like connect there with him, like bring his attention and focus there so that like he had that safety while he was going through this experience. Between that and his training,
Yep.
he was able to realize like the monumental um thing that offered, that helped him in that particular traumatic experience. And when you think about the trauma that you have had around being either like misunderstood,
Mm-hmm.
um, like an experience of lack of integrity, lack
Mm-hmm.
of honesty, lack of, um,
Yes, because when you bring that up, what my mom has always said, lack of telling me is the same as lying to me.
right? Which is the thing I was freaking out over about not having said anything about the clock. Wait,
Yep.
wait, 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 wait. Not
And
saying something.
noticing, you said the thing about Peter Levine. And I remember when Grayson and I, we were about to move over to Maui and she and I had gone to Target for something and we were the car behind, like, you know, when you watch a car accident and it's like in slow motion and you're just like, this is about to happen, but it's in slow motion, but it's in fast motion all at the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I watched this truck pull out of this, there was several, like there's like a bank and then there was the main driveway to get to Target and the truck was pulling out of the bank. The other car was leaving Target. So the truck just somehow missed it. Like I saw it happen and he hit her. And she was visibly, obviously upset. She was in her survival state, stress response. And I told Grayson, I parked, I pulled over and I was like, stay in the car, let me go, because we're in our stress response. We're in the back of our head, right? We're not in our
Mm-hmm.
prefrontal cortex. And me just having like such compassion. And here's the other thing I think that I've noticed is like, I cry when people cry, because I feel probably what they feel. And
Mm-hmm.
um, she was upset and she was crying and I was teary too. And I was just like, you're okay. You know, like after I asked her, like, are you hurt? Are you injured? Is he hurt? Is he injured? Right. Because a lot of times people get in accidents and then it's like, you hit me. And then there's this like shame. No one can make you feel shame, but there's the shame that the person might
The
experience that hit the
shame, the
person,
blame,
right?
the,
All of
yeah.
that. So they were both okay. And I was like, okay, do you feel safe enough to pull your car out of the way? Because it was in the middle of, you know, trying to leave Target. And she was like, yes. And she was shaking. She's like, I don't even know what to do. So I basically handled the entire transaction between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
had them exchange numbers, got insurances, all of this stuff, got both of their numbers, ended up helped her through it. She's like, I'm so grateful for you. Like, I don't even know what I would have done. I've never been in an accident before. She was like, I just got divorced and I'm just already, my emotions are heightened. And here we go back to like, it's just another human being that I am seeing that needs help, love, and compassion. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, texting her after the fact and being like, is everything okay? Like, do you need help filing the insurance claim? I'll be happy to help you. And so when you said that about Peter Levine, it's like, yeah, like we're in that stress response. Like we just need someone to be like, I see you, right?
Yeah.
I get you. And noticing where it's okay. Maybe a story that I have that's coming up because you guys are getting to see real life processing is it's okay to do that for a same sex. It's not okay if you see someone of your opposite sex because of, what might be construed, happen. I'm not quite sure, but
yeah,
my body,
your body's
internalizing that. Huh?
yeah. Like just responding to that story
Yeah.
coming up right now.
Yeah.
Also, when we can, we are not men.
Correct.
Just like we're not a person of color. We're not,
All
we're
the
not,
things.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we can't completely know what it's like to walk a mile in that person's shoes.
Correct.
And the work that you and I have done allows us to see the human.
That's what, yes.
Right? Allows us to see that this is a human being having a human experience and remove all of those labels, judgments, categories, like all of that. And it gives us a level of compassion, say around like, I can look at my husband and know he experiences his own, like what society would say of him being a white man of his age, and the expectations and judgments that are put on him about what's right or wrong about him, how he can or cannot behave. And just noticing having an awareness around the limitations. And I'm wondering if that's also part of what's coming out from underneath your arms right now is this like the BO or the
because I do have BO sometimes. Let's just be honest. I'll share that.
fire,
Yeah.
right? Of that,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's not okay to be that way. You're doing it wrong. It's
for sure.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
not safe.
Yep. Yeah.
And we can have so much compassion for somebody that has had those kinds of stories, whether it's your gender, whether it's your sexual preference, whether it's your race, whether it's your religion, whether it's your culture. It's all a set of limitations, expectations, codes of conduct, ways that we are expected to be or not to be. And in the liberation of that, sometimes it shows up like BO and raw red arms or fingers or pimples or shingles or lots of poop or constipation or all the stinkies, right?
Yeah. And what I'm thinking about right now is just how much, and this is what I was describing to the person. I'm like, just how much the body holds stories and we don't even know until something happens. And this is also what I said. I'm like, we don't have to go back with every single thing and figure out what it is, right? I'm not advocating for that. But when it happens, it's being present and just allowing it to come up and out and to be expressed. And I'm just thinking about like as I said, I'm processing it as we're talking about it. It's just interesting. I mean, I for sure think I'm trying to be honoring and respectful of my parents. So this might need to be cut out, Mary. But when you have had like, do I hit pause and then I just say this and then I hit back on, or do I just?
Can you take a breath into it and just notice if it's the discomfort of releasing, or if it's like it just doesn't feel safe?
I want to be respectful. It's kind of like what you've said about your daughter's stories. Mm-hmm. So it's not your place to tell your daughter's stories.
Right.
It's coming up right now.
I get to also, like, I'm not going to dive into her details. And sometimes there's some overlap of what my experience. So I usually, like in my sharing, I'm focusing on what I'm experiencing and what I'm feeling and trying to put it into terms of, this is what's happening for me. So what are you noticing is happening for you right now?
I'm noticing that you're not supposed to share someone else's marriage stuff.
And was that shared with you?
Yeah. But you're not supposed to tell anybody. It's like the keep quiet, right?
Yeah. And what did that keep quiet?
It only was shared with me because I forced it in a way, because I came back with a response. It wasn't going to be shared with me. And then I made some comments about some things. And then that angered my mom. And then that's when she said, then my dad needs to tell me all the things.
How does it feel to hold all of these secrets? And I'm not suggesting that you're like going to tell a story about them, but this is where there's that, like, massaging out the parts that are you, that you've been holding and you've been carrying and you've had to bear the burden.
It's coaching session right now. Let's go.
Yeah.
Here's real time. Okay, to be in complete transparency right now, do I feel safe? Yes. Do I feel like releasing this? Not quite yet. I need some processing time on that. Yeah. Because what's coming up is that little Erin that's like, it's not your fucking place.
And like, you will, and I will support you in tending to little Erin.
Yeah.
But also in this moment, like for those that might listen to this, knowing that little Erin didn't have to be responsible, yet she was made responsible to carry adult stuff.
My brain wants to be like, but you were 20, but still. Yeah, I know. I'm just telling you what my brain's giving back.
Yeah. Because how we do anything is how we do everything, right? You and I talk about this all the time. And so did it start at 20?
Oh, for sure. No.
Right?
Yeah.
So we can totally table this at the moment.
Yeah.
Especially because this is a really vulnerable spot to be on camera. And
it is not that. Here's the thing. If we're being fully transparent, it is not about being on camera or any of that. It is the repercussions that little Erin thinks are going to happen with her parents. That's what this is about. And maybe we're saying the same thing, right? But like it's that little girl who's like, you went and did something I didn't give you permission to do.
Where do you feel that in your body?
If anywhere, it might be in my chest.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you did it wrong. You didn't ask. You assumed. You took it upon yourself. It's interesting. It's like the stories you physically held, and it's the stories I know about all the people that I hold.
Mm-hmm.
Something else that comes up is like, it's because I don't judge, because I'm completely open, because I see someone telling all of the things, sharing all of the things. Obviously, it didn't start at 20, right? So
Mm-hmm. The term that's coming up is like, with great power comes great responsibility.
mm-hmm.
You have this power to have people tell you things and reveal things to you and to open up to you. You've had it since you were really little. And parents that were not immune to that part of you, which is one of the things that makes you so magical. You and I share this gift of like, people can open up to us because they feel safe with us.
Mm-hmm.
They feel safe to be who they are. And realizing that we've been practicing this since we were very little.
Mm-hmm.
And with that has also come the times where it's like, don't you violate my trust. You need to keep the
Yes.
secret. Like,
Yes.
with great power comes great responsibility. Like, you have to hold all of that. And I'm like, of course it's happening here. Like, think about the sweat pouring out. This right here is all around your heart and your throat chakra, that ability to express and to hold and to like embrace as well as release. That's, to me, that's like kind of what I'm sensing is this, like, I know I have this gift and I have to use it for good, not evil. And if I break a, a trust that really, and I'm not saying this from a place of like encouraging you to share something you don't want to share, but what I
Mm-hmm.
am saying is like recognizing where, because there are plenty of people out there that have had the experience of being the secret holders,
Yep.
being the entrusted. Like, I did
This
nails
is
for
this is let me say something. This is
yeah.
true because when I was doing real estate and I wanted to either put on my website. Gosh, I don't even know what it was about. But I asked my mom if I could share this story of us having the money and not having the money. I know why. Because they felt like there was no other option, right? They had to sell their house or they had to rent it out. They had to They had to rent it out, and then they had to go get a rental, right? Like they felt like they had no other options. So one of the things I was going to talk about is like me buying from someone allowed them to have the option that they could easily not have to give any money to a realtor. They could, like, it was just another, and I was going to share that story, right, of what my parents experienced. And my mom was like, no, I don't want that shared. Here we go. This is the other thing. That's my story. That's our story, right? But here we go back to that's your story. And I also have my perspective of what I experienced.
It
Right?
was your story too, right? That's where
Yeah.
it's like allowing ourselves to have ownership of what the experience was for us.
Yep.
I don't need to tell my daughter's stories, but I
Right.
do get to tell the experience that I had and take ownership of that.
Yeah. So if we're asking like what's really coming up is like, oh, you can talk about all your shit, Erin, but if you bring me into it, that's a no.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning my mom and my dad. I don't think my dad as much, but it's my mom. You know, it was always Norman Rockwell, and it had to look, we had the facade and like, let's look pretty for Christmas. And which was a big clashing, you know, that she and I had all the time. I'm like, we look fucking nice in pictures, but what happened 5 minutes before we fucking just smiled for the camera?
Mm-hmm.
So it's that,
Truth telling,
yeah,
transparency,
mm-hmm.
being true to who we really are instead of putting up a facade.
Yeah, big time, right? Which has always been some clashing between me and her, because I'm like, this is fucking bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And so then what's coming up for me right now is me thinking about, is it kind of like, it's not an asking, it's just like, hey, listen, part of what we're doing at Who You is sharing our experiences. And what that might look like is that looks like our childhood, our experiences from my perspective. Mm-hmm. So I'm obviously a little bit, not sugarcoat, but like heads up, things might come out that you may or may not enjoy or approve of. And I'm just, what am I doing? I guess I'm just letting you know ahead of time.
Full disclosure.
Yeah.
And how does that make little Erin feel?
That feels really good because I'm telling you, and I am saying, this is what I'm going to do. This feels empowering. If I were to release it without having the conversation, it feels like, it's almost like a little bit of like,
I didn't tell the whole truth.
Distrust. Mm-hmm. Versus me saying, hey, listen, this is what's about to go down. And you're okay to be upset with me if that's what you want to do. I love you so much, but this is what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. I can receive that, right? It's kind of like when someone might say, I'm just like thinking of an analogy. It's like when someone tells you, like, if a coworker is like, yeah, stealing is what came to mind. But like, if a coworker is just sitting here saying stealing and being like, okay, listen, you can tell me this, but like, dude, I don't support this. Don't tell me anymore because I don't want to say allegiance, but like my integrity is like, hey, I can't sit here and like, know you're doing this and not say anything. Mm-hmm. So where I'm at right now is like, okay, what does this look like when we talk about everything?
Real,
because I
filtered.
Yeah. And I have told, like I have told you already, like I have told Jason, like, listen, we might talk about your BMW experience, and I'm going to talk about it from my experience. Mm-hmm. Because he was one that was like, I don't want you to say anything. And I'm like, listen, I'm not going to say anything about your experience, but I'm going to talk it from Erin's view of being married to someone that this occurred with. I'm going to say something. Mm-hmm. It's okay if you want to be upset with me or mm-hmm. My dog's bouncing off my energy because he's partying and it smells so bad right now.
But like, let all the stinkiness go.
But that's what's coming up right now. If I say to my parents, listen, part of us building who you and us sharing all of our experiences, from my perspective, it might look like sharing what happened to some of the things that happened to me
Yeah.
when I was
They're
younger, older, whatever.
yours.
Yeah. Hmm.
They're your experiences.
Yeah, it's a little bit of noticing, like, and this is totally my mom, like wanting to control, right? Wanting to control and to say what we can and cannot say and or do, right? What have I always said? I know what I want. My dad says I can't have it. My mom says I can't say it.
Mm-hmm.
More so what I've referred to as I can't say it is can't be harsh, can't be forward, can't be to the point, right? But now this is also like you can't say things that happened with me. It's like, and they happened with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're not going
And
to be, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I'm committed 100% to me. And that might look like parents getting upset. That might look like husbands getting upset. That might look like whatever.
Yeah.
Which we know I'm not the only one, right?
Nope. Oh, sweet baby girl. I'm
Yeah.
looking at your arms thinking, oh, I know what it feels like in my body when this was happening on my hands and when I had it
Yeah.
all over my back. It was like, dear God, please, somebody anesthetize me because this hurts so
Okay.
bad.
So let's take it a level deeper.
Yeah.
That what that means, here we go back to, it's not just about grades. If you do something I don't approve of, I will withhold my love from you.
Mm.
Big Erin knows that that's not true, but what are you setting
Erin.
yourself up for, right?
Yeah.
And when you have parents, how do I want to say this? When you have a mother, from my perception, that is able to control your father, it can look like withholding love and or withholding money and or withholding, whatever.
Yeah. I've had more than one therapist in the past. Like, I'm by no way dis um, disparaging or devaluing therapy. I think a good therapist can be the right therapist can be monumental for some people. More healing in working with trauma and coaching and in like our relationship and even my relationship with my husband. Um, but I've had many therapists say this: you're only as sick as your secrets, right?
Yeah.
The secrets
Yeah.
that we hold.
Yep.
And that's where my mission became like
I'm
open,
open, right? Yep.
open,
Mhm.
raw, transparent, right? Um, which is why I needed to come back and have part two to that one episode. And I also am at this point where I'm like, do I need to tell the whole world
Everything.
every single solitary transgression that I've had? No, because I know who I am now. I know I am not those transgressions. And where we had to go, where I had to go, where you've had to go to move from this space over to this space. Like it's not been a leap. In some cases, it's been like jumping from this rock to this rock and then this rock to this rock. And so like I think this is going to help a lot of people to understand
Yeah.
like it comes up and like neither of us is immune to like I've been like I keep my secrets of my clients and at the same time I also like I've always been one to just be like completely open with everything to where I've had my integrity questioned And I'm like, I'm not sharing someone else's experience. In the past, my daughter, unfortunately, um, dealt with a mom that had no boundaries and no, like, I don't, how do I say this? I don't have boundaries now, but I had to have boundaries before I could take those off again.
Right.
And in the beginning, I would share things, my the way I would say them was like from her perspective and her experience. And now
Yeah.
I'm very aware of, I'm sharing and taking ownership for my experience that may be intertwined, and what you're hearing from me is my ownership of my experience and my life. I'm not going to presume to tell you.
What also comes up is, here you go again, you're the pot stirrer. I mean, I like to be called the liberator now, okay? The pot stirrer came from like an anger point, but like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And for me, it was the troublemaker.
yeah.
There you go, causing trouble again,
Yeah.
poking the bear. People don't want to talk about that stuff. Why are you bringing it up? Yep.
Yeah.
I think this needs to be like part 3.
Yeah. First, I need to sit my parents down, not on day one when they come over, but
Well, this will be like
no,
a couple
I
weeks
know.
down
It's
the road,
funny.
but
It's just like, yeah. So here's the deal.
yep. Full
And
disclosure.
here's the other thing that I want people to, that are listening, to think about. When you have been, as Erin has been, which I'm sure many of you have been, a good little girl that listens to her parents and does what they want her to do,
Follows all the rules.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It can make your parents quite upset. Dragging me through the mud.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't sign up for this. All the things, all the stories that are what people, my parents might say.
Mm-hmm. This is where you and I have the, like, I have the story of like, you need to be responsible for what you've done.
Yeah. And then now mine is like, I'm not responsible for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For sure.
Because you've always felt responsible for how everyone feels.
Mm-hmm. And it was my job, right? To make, I mean, many a times my dad or my mom would be like, you know, even on my mom's most recent flight back home from Hawaii, you know, last year, like having the anxiety, and my dad texting me and be like, can you please, you know, like, here we go. You need to talk to your mom. She's making me crazy with her anxiety. You have to do something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. So
Yeah.
this is it, folks. This is the work.
And sometimes it looks like the underarms of Erin, or the hands that I had. Oh, baby girl.
What's it really interesting is this has occurred over the last 3 hours. Like, this is, there's a part of me that's like, this is really important to share. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how, I don't want to say how quickly our bodies or what, but like, I'm looking at it for the first time. You know, I haven't looked at it in a mirror, but like, yeah, this is the deal.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, that may be listening to us just on an audio podcast, our episodes of Who University podcast are also available on YouTube. So if you want to see a visual of what we're talking about, go there. Yep.
And I'm always open for questions, or, you know, like, in terms of, when I say questions, well, I'm always open for everything, right? But like, I'm open for questions of like, you know, questions you have about it, things of that sort. Because I think for the people that are very doctor driven, they would be like, something's wrong with me. I need some cream on it.
Mm-hmm.
And full disclosure, sometimes when it gets so bad, like, do I believe our bodies heal ourselves? 100%. Do I sometimes put a little cream to make the fire tolerable? 100%. So, yeah.
Yep. Same thing for me. I'm like, I know that my body is self-healing and it's doing everything it needs to. And sometimes it's not the body that needs the cream. It's not the body that needs the ointment to heal. It's the little girl that's in a mental anguish about, this hurts. What did I do to deserve this? Or why is this happening to me? It's that psychic, mental anguish that the little version of us inside says, why does this hurt? Why do I have an owie? And why can't somebody just kiss it and make it better, right? The body doesn't need it. The mind and the child needs the nurturing and the care to say, you're going to be okay. This will heal. This will shift. And I know that right now it hurts really bad. And if you need to cry, if you need to yell, if you need, whatever you need to do, it's okay to feel our feelings. Yep.
That's what we're going to leave you with, friends. Feeling our feelings.
Feeling. Fuck.
Erin will be back next time. We'll go feel my feelings.
It'll be the 3 F's. Feeling our feelings and fuck.
Yeah.
Right.
So grateful for each of you. Thanks for listening.
Yep. Love you. Till next time.